and welcome back. This is World Talks coming to you live from Warsaw. I'm Stalia Strzemska. A SpaceX capsule delivered 4 astronauts to the ISS early today on Sunday in a NASA crew swap mission. This allows a pair of famous stuck astronauts, Butch Wilmore and Sunita Williams, to return home after 9 months on the orbiting lab. To understand what happened and why were they stranded for so long, I have our very own Jakub Kapiszewski, TVP WORLD's business editor, joining me here at the studio right now. Good morning, Jakub. Delighted to have you with us.
Good morning. Delighted to be here. Thank you for having me.
Before we start our discussion, let's take a quick look at some of the footage that we have from this complex operation. All right, so the capsule has safely docked at the ISS. The astronauts are supposed to start their return on Wednesday morning. So hopefully everything will end well. However, what happened? Why they were stranded for so long? They spent 9 months there, and they were supposed to spend 8 days, if I'm not mistaken?
Yeah, 8 to 30 days. That was the original plan. However, so to say, the ride on the International Space Station has been broken. Butch and Sunny, as they are called usually by the media, arrived at the International Space Station on a capsule called Starliner. So this is a construction made by American defense company Boeing. And after they arrived, there were some technical issues with thrusters. So these are the main engines that are used to steer the ship while it's docking to the station itself. NASA determined that potential risk, like safety risk, is too high to actually bring them down on Starliner. So Starliner came back without people on board. And this left Butch and Sunny in space. However, saying that they were stranded, not technically true. Because NASA made the decision, okay, we already have 2 extra astronauts on the International Space Stations. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna basically take 2 people off the flight manifest, of the usual flight manifest. So only 2 will join those 2, and in this way we're going to have full 4-people crew. So it's as they just went to the International Space Station on an ordinary flight, but just a little bit earlier than their 2 of their comrades, an American astronaut and a Russian cosmonaut, which arrived a little bit earlier. So of course, well, they were supposed to stay 8 days, but they were just like put on a normal flight manifest, so they don't have to be brought back, because this brings all kinds of logistical issues and so on.
Right, I'm sure they were taken by surprise, though. However, I saw a recent interview with them. They seemed quite happy with the research that they were conducting at the ISS, saying that it actually was going quite well. So they're leaving at this peak moment, if you will. However, before we get into the research and what the ISS does, I just wanted to touch on the political angle, because, you know, I use the word stranded because, well, I mean,
yes,
it has been spinned by the current administration that, you know, perhaps they could have been brought back earlier, but because of Joe Biden, they weren't. Is there any truth to that?
It's very strange, because there were those allegations brought by Elon Musk, so the founder of SpaceX, a major space subcontractor for the American government, that those people were left over there for political reasons. Elon Musk said it on his social media network X. And there was even an exchange he made with European astronaut telling him that he's lying, and then Elon Musk calling him publicly, and I quote, fully retarded. So, yeah, exactly. That's how Elon Musk operates right now on his social media. So if they were stranded, this would suggest that there was no ride home, that there was no measure by which we could take them from the space station back to Earth. However, the ride, so the Dragon capsule, it was docked with the space station itself all the time. right? So it wasn't like there was no way of getting them back. That they had the capsule docked with the International Space Station, but they were just, as I said earlier, they were just moved to a normal manifest. So NASA decided once they are already there, let's just leave them over there for a couple of months mission. So they weren't stranded.
Right,
Like there were ways of getting them back.
So I apologize for being overly dramatic, but let's talk
No. No one really knows why Musk did that. Why he suggested publicly that there was some political ulterior motive to all this operation. NASA denies that.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about these crafts, these various crafts that they could use, the capsules and so on. Since you're a business editor, you've mentioned that the Starliner was manufactured by Boeing, right? It didn't do very well. I mean, Boeing has had some bad rap recently with the infamous 737, and now with this, I believe. Then, of course, we have SpaceX. I believe these astronauts also traveled on the Russian Soyuz vessel. So who is leading in this space race? I mean,
well, in the commercial space race, there is SpaceX, and then, frankly speaking, no one, and then just a handful of companies. SpaceX has dominated the commercial space services, if you will, for the last couple of years. So what they are doing, they are having their own rocket, which is Falcon 9, and they are using it to fire all kinds of cargo into space and putting satellites into orbit. They have a contract with NASA to ferry astronauts from Earth to the space station and back. They have a contract to ferry cargo to the International Space Station. Now they are working on the Starship, so this totally massive rocket that unfortunately blew last week, which is going to be used to put astronauts on the moon. So this is the famous Artemis program of Americans going back to the moon. And also Elon Musk has these plans to send people to Mars using this Starship. But this is like a very, very, very far away idea. And then you have other contractors which aren't doing as well. You've mentioned Boeing. Boeing actually, when NASA said, listen, let's have private companies sending people to the International Space Station, because previously it has been done just by the government, by the NASA itself. But they had this idea during the Obama administration, maybe private companies can take part in it. So they made a tender, and Boeing actually got twice as much as money as SpaceX for construction of this capsule. So 10 years later, SpaceX has flew 10 missions, passenger missions to the International Space Station, and Boeing flew just one, and it ended in failure because the ship had to be brought back to Earth without people on board. So that's a failure. So this kind of shows you how SpaceX as a space startup operates quite differently than Boeing, which is a big, major defense contractor used to having like this fat government contracts, and still they are operating at a loss. So they won a contract that was twice as big as SpaceX. They haven't delivered the capsule, and they are still making losses on it. So this kind of the big difference between how SpaceX and other space companies operate.
Right, but can we say that SpaceX now has a monopoly on this sort of space exploration scene, at least in the US?
But right now it is a monopoly, but it's a virtual monopoly, right? So it's virtual in a sense that just other companies aren't performing. They are still conducting research. So, for example, you know Jeff Bezos, like the founder of Amazon. He has his own space company, which is called Blue Origin. And they are also working on a rocket that's going to be used in government contracts. But this rocket isn't ready yet. So it's not flying. It's not putting stuff into orbit. So right now, virtual monopoly, this only means that Musk is the only one who has a workable rocket right now. If you were a client interested in putting some stuff into space, Elon Musk is your guy because he is the only one with a working rocket right now. But the situation will change in a couple of years because we have numerous startups working on their own rocket solutions, and they are probably also going to be used by the US government because the policy is that we don't want to rely on one contractor.
Absolutely.
We want to have someone else also doing the heavy lifting. So it's a virtual monopoly, but it's not going to last.
All right. Well, so let's just talk a little bit about research that is being conducted at ISS. I've read about some microalgae and microbes and all sorts of interesting things, including workout devices. So what are they doing and what is the most significant?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, being an astronaut on the International Space Station, I think it kind of sucks. But let me tell you why. It's just because you are 24 hours a day on a duty, right? You've got 8 hours of sleep. You sleep in a very uncomfortable accommodation, so to speak. You need to be very close to a working ventilator shaft because in microgravity, warm air doesn't rise up to the ceiling. So if you were sleeping on the floor, you could just wake up with a bad headache because of all the carbon dioxide that would, surround you after all nights of breathing. You have to wake up. The time on International Space Station is the London time, so UTC, GMT. And then it's just work, work, work. Because basically what International Space Station is a big laboratory. So these people have the hands full of experiments that are being brought on cargo missions, and they have to tend to them, they have to manipulate them, they have to change the stuff and move the stuff and so on. So it's a full day job. It begins in the morning, quick breakfast. You don't shower at the International Space Station, you just use wet towel. Clothes, you don't wash them. Clothes are disposable. That's a cool thing about being an astronaut. You just, once you wear it out, you just throw it out.
Very eco-friendly, though.
Yeah, exactly. So they have to tend to experiments. And these are all sorts of experiments. So for example, this mission that's going to depart in a couple of days, possibly on Wednesday, as you said, there was an experiment when they were just looking under the microscope of how cells that are inside of our bone marrow, how they divide and how they behave in a microgravity. Because live tissues tend to operate in a different manner in microgravity. Understanding that helps us understand what's going on with the astronauts' bodies during long stays in space. And there was also an experiment looking how plants in space grow, but when they are devoid of moisture.
Oh, that is quite interesting. Actually,
yeah, exactly.
It's quite fascinating. Yeah, so if someone wants to take a closer look at the research, they can go to NASA's website, I believe. They describe all of this because unfortunately we have to wrap up. I wish we had more time. Jakub Kapiszewski, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
And thank you for watching World Talks. Please stay tuned for more here on TVP WORLD.